Muy buenas freaks, bienvenidos a Freakvisión, tu canal de cine de terror. Y hoy estamos aquí estrenando la sección de Making Of. Será una sección donde yo, cuando me revisiono alguna película de las mías, de mi colección, y vea que tienen unos extras, porque yo siempre los extras me los acabo viendo, y veo que merecen la pena, pues sin ningún problema los pondré aquí en el canal para que vosotros lo disfrutéis. Hoy es el caso de Crawl, Infierno Bajo el Agua, una película que recientemente me he vuelto a revisionar, con este rollo, ya sabéis, de temática acuática, películas de refrescantes, películas de verano, en este caso es de unos cocodrilos. Aquí os dejo una review que hice en el canal hace un tiempo, por si esta película no la habéis visto o la habéis visto recientemente, queréis ver esa review, pues nada, y no me enrollo más. Vamos con el cómo se hizo y Crawl.
I kind of like that we start here, and then when you go to rescue her, if you get attacked over there, you're kind of going to move to this space. Oh, yeah. Here. I see filmmaking as an immersive art form, where your goal as a director is to annihilate or like erase any distance between the viewer and the screen. To be sure that whatever story you're looking at, you forget that you're looking at it and you're living it. Like, it's all about crossing on the other side of the mirror and be with the character. And especially when you do a survival story, and especially when you do a movie that takes place over just one day, you want to be in the experience.
Well, ever since I saw Alex's movie Hot Tension, he's somebody that I really wanted to work with. He's a director that really knows how to create great suspense for the audience and is a great storyteller. So I'd always hoped to have a chance to work with him, and my dream came true when I met Craig, and we had a chance to work on Crawl together.
Sam, tell him about the letter that you went and found.
Oh, yeah, I found a letter that I had written to Alex 15 years ago to try and get him to direct a film called Messengers. And at the time, he was too busy.
At the time, it was, I had that amazing choice. I was crazy. It was between doing The Hills of Eyes with Wes Craven, or making this other movie at the time with Sam Raimi.
While we were working on this film, I was cleaning out my office. I found that letter and showed it to him.
It was great, fantastically preserved. So
my dream came true after 15 years.
It was a blessing to have such a great collaborator, by my side to help me make this movie. This is our hero house.
Wow.
I think long way to go. It's going to be scenic painting on the ground. This is like a road along the lake. I remember the Friday I received the script from Craig Flores, the other producer, and I remember having this kind of immediate connection.
I got it as a spec. I read it. I loved it. I've always wanted to work with Alex. I thought it was perfect for him.
I gotta go down there, don't I?
We wanted to come up with something that we thought really would be kind of a slam dunk. And I just was like, alligators. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. I lived in Florida, and I would see like alligators swimming around right by our apartment complex, and I just thought that's so messed up that everybody's just so casual about them kind of living among us.
They're having practice during a hurricane.
Along with alligators, until recently, same with hurricanes, right? Like, hurricanes would be coming and they would just always be talking about, well, just hunkering down. And so Michael he came to me a couple years ago, and he's like, I have this idea for a movie. Like, what if you kind of mix those two crazy situations in Florida with the alligators and a hurricane?
Yeah, it's so obvious, hurricane category 5 and alligators. It's crazy that no one have done it before.
The spec version was a little more contained in the crawl space, and he's like, can we expand it and just don't set any limits?
Dad! There's two of them!
And the whole movie should be from the crawl space to the rooftop of the house, with the water rising and more alligators getting more and more dangerous, because the more water you have, the more in their territory you are. And that was the beginning of this adventure. Of course, it meant that the movie will be slightly more expensive and more ambitious, but they went for it.
It happens, these hurricanes come in and these cities flood, and the alligators seek high ground when it floods. So it really makes sense that there could be a house in this flood zone the water overtakes it, and these gators come in. So it's like this insane scenario that really could happen. And that's what was so exciting to me about it. And fortunately, Alex's direction was spot on and very realistic in his approach, unlike how I tried to influence it. But he was consistently realistic, and it really did further the great underlying strength of the film that it could happen.
You're going to have at some point to be close enough to help Ali back here after the attack. So maybe as she's going, you should also start moving this direction. You can go, that will be a pipe. You can go the other one.
The most challenging element in making Crawl was beyond all the technique, the water, and the challenges that we had making the movie, was to find that right balance between drama and survival action.
Crawl is an alligator movie, but it's also a father-daughter story. And so the fact that we basically have two different types of movies going at the same time, it kind of makes it really dynamic and interesting.
It's about a family coming together with alligators, as long as there's alligators.
Alex worked closely with the head of the Paramount Studios in casting these two characters, and I think they did a great job.
I think what would be great, Barry, is if you go and get that hold there. If I go and get this one. This one with the tool belt to do your leg stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing.
Barry is a very interesting actor because he has this kind of a range of emotion that you see in every part that he's playing. He's someone that's very devoted, is very, he has like a very strong method of acting.
Wait! We're down here! When I first read the character of Dave, I immediately identified with him. There was so many markers in his life that were markers in my life. I brought little personal touches to the character that were special to me. Tattoos, my necklace that my wife gave me when we were first dating, and my daughter's bracelet, and things that would just make it personal to me. My boots, I brought my own boots, things that would ground me in the character, and I wouldn't have to search for Dave. I could just be Dave, except for the fact that I didn't believe that I could possibly be her dad. It's like, we're contemporaries, right? And then I looked in the mirror, I was like, oh, you're 48. Yeah, you have an 18-year-old daughter. I think you can do this.
I love movies like this where you are just one-on-one with someone and you get the time to truly build the character the way you want to. You get the opportunity to have an audience invest in your character and root for them because they're seeing so much of them and they're following them on their journey. And that's kind of what I really wanted to do. It's something that you get to do a lot in indie projects, in television, but it's quite rare in big studio movies. And that's definitely something that I was really intrigued about.
And also, it's great working with Barry. I've known him before. He was in the Maze Runner movies.
We didn't share a lot of scenes together in Maze Runner, but we were always around each other. I knew he was there. So it was really wonderful to get to know him on a much more personal level. I'm a huge fan of his work, so it's wonderful to know that we would be able to build that relationship together. I knew he cared about the father-daughter relationship as much as I did and was just as passionate about making sure that we had that in the movie to ground it in some ways.
Kaya is a complete master of skill. She's an amazing actress. It was also quite personal for her. And I think that somehow to savor that in the story was something very personal and something that was also had a strong echo in her own soul.
She has a vulnerability that she eventually reveals to the audience through Alex's direction that makes her very endearing to the audience. So she's really the kind of hero you want to root for, and the casting of her, because of those complexities in the actress, makes it really work for me.
We decided to make this movie in the least Floridian place in the world, which is Belgrade, Serbia.
In real life, the water should start somewhere around here up to the step there.
So that would be in maybe like 18 inches of water over there, just enough for the boat.
Yeah, like the three first step.
When we went there, we wanted the back lot where the whole community is. We thought we were going to be in open field. We were looking for space to build a tank and then build all the homes and the gas station outside. And then we were there with our cinematographer, Maxime Alexander, who Alex has worked with and known since they were in college. And it just hit us at that point that we're going to have a hurricane and these dark clouds and this muted, it's a very stylized and specific sky tone.
And you will have to erase all the sky, all the trees to replace them by CG trees because you cannot recreate that type of wind or that type of rain. Then, we came to this idea that, in fact, we didn't need soundstage because with the wind machine and the rain, it was the most noisy shoot we could imagine and with barely no sound to save. So we will look into the port of Belgrade. And the port of Belgrade is right on the Danube in the city. And it has like two giant warehouses.
We had 5 or 6 100-meter by 80-meter shipping container warehouses that we turned into sound stages.
Because we wanted to build a full neighborhood from the gas station to hold the house to the main house and be able to make that full stage a tank that we could fill up to 9 to 12 feet, which is a gigantic construction. And we needed other stage to build the other tank, the tank where we were going to build the crawl space, the tank where we're going to build every level of the house inside, the ground floor, the second floor, and the rooftop, and other small tank where we're going to build the staircase that's going to fill with water. I mean, it was endless. It was crazy.
We've never built so many tanks on one movie before, and all of us were scratching our heads. How do we do this? One time they were concrete, then they were wood, then there's steel, and we finally arrived on a really clever system from the UK. It's a modular panel system, and our marine coordinator Ian very cleverly designed these great environments. They can be any size, any height, and they've worked brilliantly.
It was a total amount of over 5 million litres of water between all the sets.
Also, you have to create a current for all this water. It can't just be static water. It's water that has a flow to it. And in order to keep all this water and going to each tank, you have to have another 2 or 3 temporary holding tanks. So filling that up takes a long time, patching any leaks takes a long time, and just having it ready to use on the day you need to shoot it, and then getting it into each set that you needed to take some time.
And then the water needs to be clean and filtered and heated because you cannot have a crew and actors being in the cold water. So even if you go very high, even if you go up to almost like 100 degrees water, it's still very cold for your body after 6 hours. It's a weird thing. It's like really hot water, and when you come in the morning, it's nice. But after 5 or 6 hours, you start freezing, and that's why you have to wear a wetsuit, and you have to come out and come in. So it was tough on everyone.
It's been a fight every single day. I have to admit, an amazing camera crew fighting against water, against wind, and then swapping, because you're not shooting like with normal cameras and then you go either on top of the water or on the water. No, not at all. We're jumping from cranes to splashbacks, which are pretty like a simple base like cover, but electronically a little bit tricky to set it up, to housing like nauticams. Extremely complicated to use it, and everything is based also the different temperatures, because the water has been changing between an average of 25-27 Celsius degrees, I don't know, Fahrenheit, to a little bit more than 30 exceptionally. But with the color, with the lights, temperature goes up and down. So steam is a major issue for lenses. So it's been like a chess game. Extremely patient, some nervous moment indeed.
And then Special Effects is making for each one of these like a fish tank that goes, and each one of these panels come out, by the way. Every single panel comes out, and so they're making fish tanks that basically go on this whole thing. So they'll put hoses in, fill up the water so it'll rise and go in perfectly in the sets as the water rises on every single shaft.
Nice.
Yeah.
Daddy's inside!
They spent a tremendous amount of time building the crawl space, and it's been about 3 weeks, going on 3.5 weeks now for us in there. And I think we're all having a lot of fun.
Yeah, crawl spaces are super scary just on their own, but then throw in a few alligators in.
The idea for that came from when we lived in Texas. We had a house that had like a crawl space underneath it.
Okay. It's cool. Cable guys do it all the time.
And once you're under there, it's a perfect place to have that monster, so that you've got to either get to the hatch, get back to the hatch, or you're stuck, you're cornered.
Yeah, it's already scary enough without alligators.
Yeah, and it's right under your feet all the time, and you don't even think about it.
So this is the floor plan of the beautiful crawl space that's right here. And on the other side, right under the pool, we have the gator nest.
We used to call the crawl space the pit.
It's hell. We were filming in Serbia at the time, so it was very hot, became very humid and sticky under there, and it did smell horrific. It actually strangely got better when we started putting water in it, because then it just kind of felt like a swimming pool, and the water was clean, but it was awful. I can't sugarcoat it, it was terrible. It was a really impressive build. You know, it was to scale. It was, you had to crawl to get to one side of it, whether you were the actor or the crew member. It was dark, it was gloomy, it was wet.
You know, you have to kind of find your happy place as an actor because it's pretty tight. You know, you got all the crew in there, everybody's in their dive gear, all the cameras, the lights. It was awesome. Like, you know, you didn't have to, you just were there.
I wanted the crawl space to be a real feeling. I wanted every shot you can see the roof to give you that claustrophobic feeling all the time. And even more when the water is rising. But it was a tough one because it was almost impossible to keep the water clear because we were also using mud and organic material to create that feeling. And then you have this also crazy feeling for the lights because you want to keep it dark. And Maxime Alexandre, our DP, you know, had like this kind of crazy installation to create this beam of light and shaft of light everywhere, but we had to close. So we were in a box all the time. In that box, if you look at the footage, you were coming out from a ladder inside a box, and we were diving, and you were like moving on your floor. Which was funny is like the same way alligators are more comfortable in the water. The more water was in the crawl space, the easier it was to move in. The worst when we were like shooting the dry scene where we had to walk on the floor all the time. It was exhausting. And even to block a scene or to set up a scene with the actors, you have to really like crawl in the crawl space. And it was, you know, like somehow we were really helping everyone to be in the feeling of being in a real space.
It's gonna be sweaty.
So I'm like sweating bullets, and I didn't do anything. So
yeah, the roof's off, the doors are open, there's no lights,
and there's no 27.
It's always amazing to have something practical to work in. It helps so much as an actor. Also for me, to really tap into the feeling of being isolated and afraid. Obviously I didn't have a practical alligator to be afraid of. So I was able to use the set and the elements to tap into that kind of loneliness and insecurity that helped me keep my emotions on the surface at all times.
I have to say that I was blessed to have actors who gave me that much. You know, like Barry was in the water all the time. To stay in his character, he was staying in the water.
You're in your street clothes, you know, with boots and watch and, you know, what you went into the crawl space with before it flooded.
Wayne! Wait! There's 2 alligators down here!
So, you know, you're wearing all those street clothes. When you come in and out, it takes you in and out of the environment. And it's just almost sort of better to stay down there.
Kaya and Barry and the rest of the crew, they were really in a crawl space, trapped there with the water. No alligators, but almost.
It was just all about, you know, I'd seen the visuals of what they were going to look like, which was great. We had some photo doubles built that weren't very scary, obviously. A lot of it was me just having to go back to being a child and fully using my imagination, which was a lot of fun. We would also have days where Alex would sit with a microphone and scream at me, telling me what the alligator was doing and where he was, and oh shit, he's behind you, run! So that was helpful. I'm going for the drain pipe, okay?
Alex did a great job with the nest scene. It's a really, really scary moment. You think she's getting away, but actually she gets into a even worse place.
Alex had constructed that scene. In the original screenplay it was there, but he did this great job of really maximizing this immersive experience. It is a different environment for the audience to be in after they've been in just the crawl space.
It's also something that's very, very close to the alligator world.
Rolling and action.
Alligators usually, you know, like find places that are not necessarily in the wild to establish their nests and to lay their eggs in the middle of that kind of mud and decaying material that just bring up the temperature enough for the egg to hatch at some point.
Because it does explain why these alligators have been so aggressive.
Because in general, alligators aren't really aggressive. But when you get around their nest, they are. So we can justify why they're attacking and why they're so fierce.
The nest itself was an extension of the crawl space. It's not under the house. It's more like in the land, in between the lake and the crawl space. It's a natural mud cave, and we had this kind of mud texture on the wall with those roots coming from everywhere. There is almost like a Dagobah system feel to it. Like it's almost like you feel that Yoda could live like in the corner, like like the neighbor of the alligators. It's also an opportunity to play with sound. The whole movie is very not loud, but because of the storm, there is not that many opportunity of being very in the silence. And that scene in the nest is a very silent scene. It's a scene where you hear the like the smallest movement. So I really wanted that scene to be that suspenseful, extreme scene.
Die!
Then, after all that, where the alligator came from, that's where she has to go. And she doesn't really have a choice. She's got to go through that broken drain pipe.
So it will eventually be completely submerged? Yes. Because I always imagined it that I'd be able to swim through it, but this, it is a crawl.
I really wanted to establish the idea that somehow, because the house been for sale for so many months, some alligators went up through the evacuation drain pipe on the lakeside, and it's something that you don't really know about, but bring you an answer of how they got into the crawl space in the first place. And she knew it's dangerous. She knew it's most likely they came from here. And that's going to be a very scary scene for her.
All right.
Yeah, crazy one.
When they first got to Belgrade, they were still trying to figure out what was going to happen to the house once they flooded it. Would the house just fall apart? Had they built it properly? Was the wallpaper just going to peel off? Was the furniture going to float up and crash through windows? They just didn't know. It was just such a electric moment arriving here and realizing that they were just figuring it out, and we were going to be a part of this really exciting adventure. So it kind of added to a little bit of the thrill of it, because that was what was in the air when we first arrived, was, is this going to work?
We destroyed this one when we're done next week, and instead we're building the second floor here in the same tank, and then we destroy it, and then we build the lake bottom and the water tank.
So this is stage 2. This is the second floor bedroom set. It's basically the same set, and they've revamped it to make it look like the bedroom. And basically our tip tank, drop tank here is 54,000 litres. And we basically use it in different scenarios. So we got different angles of the ramp, we got kickers. This shot here, what we're saying here is the water level is higher than inside the room. So the water level is 3/4 of the way out the window. So how we're doing the ramp here is we've raised it up, and we've got no kicker at all, and we just push the water off the end. Another scenario we had on a different set in here was we lowered the ramp to the bottom of the window, and we put a kicker onto the ramp, so it was a tidal wave coming through, so it hit the ramp and came through like a tidal wave.
I mean, like, it was, I think, like 20-ton pressure coming down. I was insane to see, and for the living room we had to build the full living room again by the river, so the water will keep going up in the river, because the strength of the water coming from that high and that speed and that much will have destroyed anything. I mean, it was like insane, and Garrett, who was our special effect supervisor, also was like, this is insane. Everything we're doing here is like, it's crazy. But anyway, it's a water movie. We all knew that when we committed to make this movie.
In Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 3, we had some big water scenes, but I'd never used it exactly like I've seen Alex and Craig use it. They did a beautiful job with the mechanical effects team. So I was very impressed, and I've never used it in that way. I mean, to see torrents of water rushing through the house, like the place was really flooding, and to manipulate the actors in those could have been dangerous situations was expertly done, and I was very impressed.
You also had to recreate 190-mile-an-hour winds constantly while trying to hear your actors and have yourself think.
We had an incredible special effects department. They were all British lads, and I used to stand and scream at them, and they would buy me beers after work to say sorry. It was horrible. They were huge industrial wind machines that they then attached hose pipes to so that cold water would shoot you in the face along with the wind. It really did feel like being in a hurricane. I couldn't hear. Every night would go home with tinnitus, not able to hear anything because of the sound of them being there constantly. Again, miserable, awful, terrible, but really nice guys.
I do find the ending uplifting. They have survived. She's come through the long, dark day. She saved her father.
And our dog, Sugar, because everyone cares for this dog. Everyone cares for this dog, even online. I've been reading stuff like, that dog better not die. And so you're also relieved that the dog makes it.
It's a survival story. The whole journey for them is an allegory from the crawl space to the rooftop, and how they made it there, and they will survive, and how they will move on in their life, having defeated all those crazy, dangerous animals.
It's a sense of completion. At the same moment, they're free. We're out of the crawl space. She saved her father, and you know that they'll be closer in the days to come.
I wanted to do a small giant movie. And I think Crawl has this element of being contained, having only 2 characters.
We are gonna beat these pea-brained lizard shits. You and me.
A lot of danger around, but I wanted the scope to be very big. And when I look at the movie today, I hope that people that will watch it will have that very exhausting, edge-of-your-seat fun ride. Where, you almost feel that, okay, I've been there. I've been in that house. I tried to save my dad. I fought some crazy, wild beast, and I made it.
It's really an interesting mix of the primal and the modern day clashing just because of this particular storm. And it made it into a really original, why didn't somebody think of this before, but really great idea for a horror film.
It's an alligator movie, and you're here to have fun. You're not here to be traumatized. I mean, yes, you're here to be traumatized, but in a fun way.
Bueno, gente, pues hasta aquí el final del vídeo. Espero que hayáis disfrutado de este making of. Y si os mola esta sección y queréis más, pues dale fuerte al like ahí, suscríbete al canal si no lo estáis y coméntamelo por ahí abajo si te gusta esta sección, si quieres nuevas entregas, en fin. Y otra cosa, lo más importante, ver mucho cine y si puede ser, de terror. Nos vemos en el siguiente. Chao.